coming into the season, my championship pick was the Lakers. I had Anthony Davis and LeBron James getting the Lakers to the NBA championship. But as the season went along and I saw the Clippers beat the Lakers and 2 of their 3, meetings that they had this year, I changed my championship pick to the Clippers. Because if you remember, on opening night, Kawhi and the Clippers beat LeBron and the Lakers. Then on Christmas, Kawhi and the Clippers came back in the second half and they beat LeBron and the Lakers. And then, the meeting before the coronavirus took place, the Lakers won that game. So I ended up changing my pick. Originally, I had the Lakers win the championship and beating the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. But once I seen the 2 teams face off against each other in 2 out of 3 meetings, and I saw the Clippers get the best of the Lakers, I picked the Clippers to win the championship and ultimately win the Battle of LA. But last night, Clarence, as I watched what took place in Game 7 of the Western Conference semifinals between the Clippers and the Nuggets, it was a complete choke job. It was a complete choke job. Make no mistake about it. And the Clippers, honestly, for whatever reason, it seemed like once we got back to basketball and since we've been back playing basketball in the bubble, they really haven't been right ever since. You remember the incident that took place that was, everybody was talking about Lou Williams, how he went to Magic City in Atlanta. And it seemed like once he went to Magic City, Clarence, Lou Williams left his game in the ATL, man, because Lou Williams, he was terrible in this series. In this series against the Denver Nuggets, Lou Williams, I believe he shot like 4 of 27 from 3-point range. He was terrible. He shot 3 of 11 from the floor in Game 7, and he was god-awful. He hasn't been the same since he left ATL, and I don't know what the hell is going on with him. He just hasn't really played well overall. What did he have last night? 7 points, 3 of 11 shooting from the floor, 1 of 4 from 3-point range. But Lou Williams is not the 2 best players on this team, Clarence. The 2 best players on this team is Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard last night, they combined to go 10 of 38 shooting from the floor. Paul George went 4 of 16 shooting from the floor. He was 2 of 11 from 3-point range, had 10 points. In the fourth quarter, Clarence, they swung the ball to Paul George. On one particular play, Paul George hit the side of the backboard. I was watching the game, and I was here watching the game at home. I'm in Cincinnati. They in Orlando in the bubble. I had to duck. I was like, oh man, where's that going? I didn't know where that was going. And then Kawhi Leonard, he was terrible. He shot 6 of 22 shooting from the floor, 2 of 7 from 3-point range. He only had 14 points in a closeout game. Your 2 best players in a closeout game, they only gave the Clippers 24 points. Jamar Murray, he outscored Paul George and Kawhi Leonard by himself. He had 40 points last night and played big. But overall, in the fourth quarter is when your stars have to be stars and make plays for your team to win. And in the fourth quarter last night, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George went 0 of 11 shooting from the floor, and they went 0 of 7 from 3-point range. Here's the deal. Kevin Durant lost a 3-1 lead to the juggernaut Golden State Warriors. They went 73-9 that year. Steph Curry and the Warriors lost a 3-1 lead to the great LeBron James, arguably a top 3 player of all time. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Doc Rivers, who I'm going to get to in a minute, they just lost a 3-1 lead to a team that has no championship pedigree on their roster. No player on the Denver Nuggets. Yes, no player on the Denver Nuggets has a championship on their resume. They don't even have championship experience. Paul Millsap, he's only been to the conference finals. But they lost to a bunch of dudes who are dogs and they are playmakers, but they aren't superstars. Like Nikola Jokic, he might be inching his way into that superstar conversation. We're going to talk about him here in a minute. But they lost to a team that doesn't have any players on their roster who's been to an NBA Finals. This is very, very inexcusable. And Doc Rivers, he has to answer some of this bail as well. Doc Rivers, this is the third 3-1 lead he's lost in his career. He's lost 6 3-1 or 3-2 leads in his career, Clarence. And he got completely outcoached by Mike Malone. Like Mike Malone completely outcoached Doc Rivers. And the Clippers lost double-digit leads in Game 5 and Game 6. And last night, they had a 7-point lead in the second half, and the Nuggets went on an 8-0 run. And once the Nuggets went on their run, the Clippers wanted no parts of the Nuggets. No parts whatsoever. And you could tell, I told you this on Monday show. Remember I told you, I said, if the game gets late and the game is close heading into the fourth quarter, I guarantee you the Clippers are going to feel that pressure. And it happened in the fourth quarter, Clarence. And that's why Paul George and Kawhi Leonard went 0 of 11 shooting from the floor. It is inexcusable. This was a complete choke job. And they're going to have to answer all offseason long as to why they came short of the expectations. It was a complete choke job by Los Angeles Clippers.
Hey, it's a lot of questions I want to ask you on this general topic, though, Trey, because right here, I just see your face. I seen all the statuses you made, and it's just like, wow. You even seen the Undisputed show. Skip had his hand down all through the show.
Yeah.
It's bad. And I want to say this real quick before I ask you a question. Like the Clippers, they started off the fourth quarter 0 for 9. 0 for 9 in the fourth quarter. They couldn't buy a bucket if they wanted to make a layup. So right there was this example of, like, where is the identity in this offense? I think that's the problem for the Clippers. I feel like they didn't really have no structure on the offensive side, or they have no, like, legitimate play style or what they was going to run through. And I feel like that affected a lot because it just seemed like you just giving it to Kawhi. All right, Kawhi, do what you got to do. Or Paul George, get open for a 3. They didn't have no identity. Then I wanted to ask you another question too. I want to ask you another question before you start going in, because you have the floor.
Yeah.
Earlier, Doc Rivers said the players were fatigued and they didn't want to play no more than 3 minutes in the fourth quarter. Tell me, is that an excuse, or that's something that you have to take in consideration?
That's coaching. This is why Doc Rivers deserves part of the blame here. I'm not saying Doc Rivers deserves to be fired, but he deserves to be under the hot seat after this performance. Next season, Steve Ballmer, the owner for the Los Angeles Clippers, I guarantee you, he's going to be looking at Doc Rivers differently next year. He's going to be looking at Doc Rivers like, can you lead this team to a championship? Because in 7 years as being the head coach of the Clippers, he hasn't even led the Clippers to a conference finals appearance. He came up short when the Clippers had CP3 and Blake Griffin. Now he's coming up short, and the Clippers got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But real quick, I want to get back to Kawhi Leonard real quick, because all season long, Clarence, we heard from Kawhi Leonard fans how Kawhi Leonard deserves to be in that best player in the world conversation. And we heard all year long how Kawhi is better than LeBron James. And again, in 2 out of 3 meetings this year, the Clippers beat the Lakers. So the talks intensify even more. People are saying like, oh, Kawhi, he's here to take the crown away from LeBron James. He is the man in LA now, not LeBron James. Kawhi Leonard, let me give you some of these statistical numbers in this playoff series against the Denver Nuggets. Kawhi Leonard, in the first half, he averaged 14 points per game. In the second half, he averaged 10 points per game. His field goal percentage in the first half was 56% shooting from the floor. In the second half, it was 31% shooting from the floor. His three-point field goal percentage in the first half was 47%. In the second half, 27%. Okay, and then in the fourth quarter of all of these 7 games against the Denver Nuggets, Kawhi Leonard's averaged 5 points per game on 27% shooting from the floor overall, 33% shooting from three-point range. He did hit 9 of 10 free throws in the fourth quarter of these games, but those numbers are not a superstar numbers. Statistically, you need your superstar to step up in these big moments. I don't want to hear no more Kawhi is better than LeBron James talk. No more. Kawhi Leonard is not the best player in the NBA, and I don't even think Kawhi Leonard is better than Kevin Durant. Now, you can disagree with me, but Kevin Durant lost to the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. He lost to the Splash Brothers. This dude just lost to the Denver Nuggets and the Jokic, someone who can't jump higher than me or you, Clarence. I love the Joker. But the Joker ain't got no ups. He just doesn't. So overall, Kawhi Leonard, no more he's better than LeBron James. He's not. LeBron James is the best player in the world. And one more thing, Clarence, before I let you go. I want to go ahead and give LeBron James a round of applause for tonight on Wild Guys. Because LeBron James has won his 4th NBA championship. I'm going to say it right now tonight on the Worldwide Sports Network. LeBron James just captured his 4th NBA championship. He is now 4-6 in the NBA Finals.
You already just merchant it.
Yes, LeBron James and the Lakers will win the championship here in a few weeks. And Anthony Davis gets his first championship as well.
And like you always say, though, man, Trey, the Clippers, the whole Clippers team, even the players that's not even getting into the game, they are losing millions of sleep this offseason. They is losing a lot of sleep in this offseason. But real quick, I want to ask you this. How impressive you are with this Denver Nuggets team? They made it this far, the conference finals since 2009. They actually played the Lakers in 2009 in the Western Conference final. How impressed you are on this run with the Denver Nuggets?
I'm very impressed with this run the Denver Nuggets are on right now. And this is the second 3-1 deficit that they have overcame this postseason. They're the first team to overcome back-to-back 3-1 deficits in the same playoffs. Like, this is an amazing accomplishment by Mike Malone and his group. I can't say enough about the job that Jamar Murray and Nikola Jokic has done leading this Denver Nuggets team. Last night, Jamar Murray, he had 40 points, shot 15 of 26 from the floor, 6 of 13 from three-point range. And in the fourth quarter, it wasn't Kawhi, it wasn't Sweet Lou, it wasn't Paul George. It was Jamar Murray who stole the show in Game 7 with the Western Conference Finals berth on the line, Clarence. Jamar Murray was absolutely sensational last night, and he proved why he deserves to be in that, best players in the NBA on the come up. When we talk about all these young players in the NBA, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Luka, Jason Tatum, I think we got to include Jamar Murray into that conversation after these performances that he's put together in these playoffs. You remember in round 1, they were down 3-1, but Jamar Murray, he went shot for shot with Donovan Mitchell, and he kept the Nuggets in that series. And now we fast forward to this series. In the beginning stages of this series, he was inefficient, and he wasn't shooting the ball well. But then he started to notice what we noticed, that the Clippers' defense isn't as elite as we thought they were. He started to put the ball on the floor. He got to the rim, got to the free throw line, and created opportunities for others. Last night, he went 4-4 from the free throw strike. So he's done a great job at creating opportunities for others and scoring the basketball when it's called upon. Like, he's done a hell of a job. So I believe Jokic also, last night, he only had 16 points, but he had 22 rebounds and 13 assists. I think the Joker is the best passing big man we have in the league. And I think this 1-2 duo between Jokic and Jamar Murray is a duo that we have to look at as future seasons to come as a duo can possibly win a championship, Clarence. I was very impressed with this run that the Denver Nuggets have been on, but it has come to an end because they are running now into LeBron James. And what they just did to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they won't be able to do against LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But nevertheless, it was a great run that they've been on since we've been in the bubble.
So that leads me to my next question, though. That leads to the last question before we go to the next topic. We know Nikola, he's playing like a top player in the Western Conference Finals, and we obviously know he's not a top 5 player. But would you consider him as a top 10 player in the NBA today?
Yes. Right now, the way Joker's playing, right now he is a top 5 player in the NBA. Right now, he's still playing. I mean, let's call it what it is. Kawhi is at home. The Greek Freak is at home. Chris Middleton is at home. Kevin Durant was injured this year and didn't play. Kyrie Irving was injured this year and didn't play. Right now, he's a top 5 player in the NBA who's still playing. Of the 4 teams that's remaining, talk about the Boston Celtics, Miami Heat. We talk about the Lakers and the Nuggets. Obviously, with the Celtics, we got Jason Tatum. We know what the Miami Heat, we got Jimmy Butler. With the Lakers, is LeBron, Anthony Davis. You can make an argument that the Joker deserves to be on that top 5 players that's still playing list, right? I mean, We'll go number 1, we'll go probably LeBron. Number 2, probably Anthony Davis. After that, probably Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum. I think the Joker deserves to be number 5 right now on that list.
You know what's funny? That's the exact list what I had. Trey. You're reading mindset. And I think he is like a top player that you have to recognize in the NBA because he's one of the best. In my eyes, he's one of the best big men in the game because he's not athletic, but he's skill-setted enough. Like, because when defenders are guarding him, they trying to figure out, is he going to look for the pass or he's shooting the ball? So he gives them 2 options when they defending him. And I truly believe that, like, you can win a championship with this guy. like how he's a hard worker. Him and Jamar Murray, I expect something big for them in the future. But one more thing. So what's next for the Los Angeles Clippers for this offseason? What's next?
Well, it's a possibility they might lose Montrezl Harrell and Marcus Morris to free agency. We'll see what happens. But their team, for the majority, most part, will be back next year. And their main core will be back. But if they don't get it done next year, Clarence, you can make a legitimate argument that they're going to break this team up, because I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they could have signed 4-year deals, when they signed with the Clippers last offseason, but they signed 2-year deals. So I think they got player opt-outs after next season. So if they don't get it done next year, they in trouble, and it's not going to get any easier. They just lost to the Denver Nuggets, an up-and-coming team, that's going to gain more playoff experience now that they're in the Western Conference Finals, So this is a team that if they don't get it done next year, they might be broken up. But the thing is, I'm just so disappointed because I chose these guys to win the NBA championship, so they messed up my damn prediction. But overall, when it comes to the Clippers, this team, they all year long, they barked, but they never really bite anyone. Like, they always bark, but never bite. And I love CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard last night on Twitter, because I don't know if you were seeing it last night. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, they was going back and forth. They was talking about the Clippers, and Damian Lillard said to Patrick Beverly, basically essentially saying like, hey, I haven't booked my reservations for Cancun yet. If you want to join me, you still can. There's still time, Patrick Bev. If you want to join me in Cancun, I still got time. So let me know. So I just thought that was funny last night, how CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard made fun of the Clippers, because you remember earlier in the bubble during the seeding games when Damian Lillard missed those 2 free throws and my Blazers lost to the Clippers, you saw Patrick Bev and you saw Paul George making fun of Damian Lillard, talking trash to Dame. And so Dame got his get back last night at them brothers last night. So it was funny watching that. Did you see that?
Yeah, man, they was trolling. I know the Clippers got a lot of memes headed to them yesterday. Like yesterday, they were saying that big shout out to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. They combined 24 points, mentioning Kobe Bryant. I'm like, oh wow, man. And it's just sad that they couldn't get the job done. But like you said, they wasn't full synced into the season. I feel like they played hard when they played against the Lakers. Every other team, they didn't matter how they played, because at the end of the day, the Lakers is the biggest challenge to them. And this Clippers team, they've been cursed for a long, long, long time.
Oh, here you go. This was Damian Lillard. He said, I guess I should extend this Cancun invite since I haven't made my arrangements yet. That's what he was saying to Patrick Beverly. And then here goes CJ McCollum saying, I'll bring the wine, weather nice as ever too. And then he said, this was CJ McCollum. He said, my last tweet before I finish this glass. They did vote. They ain't want to play no more. But I didn't think they was going to go out like that.
Yeah,
so everyone is really clowning the Los Angeles Clippers right now, man.
Kawhi and Paul George, they should deserve all of that, because at the end of the day, you two guys are the future franchise of this franchise, man. Franchise players of this franchise. Last night was unacceptable. And from Kawhi Leonard, you looking at him like, well, you struggled all in second half of these series, but 14 points and 10 points, unacceptable, Trey.
And then here's the thing. All year long, we saw the Clippers, they had this formula for load management. Well, I felt like if you're going to have load management throughout the regular season, you damn sure better win the NBA championship. If you're going to be load managing, and if people bringing their kids to watch the Clippers play, and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are sitting out, well, you damn sure better win the NBA championship. They didn't get it done. So their entire formula and their entire experiment failed, because LeBron James, make no mistake about it, he show up every single night and he's ready to ball out for his particular team, whether it be the Lakers, whether it was when he was at the Cavaliers or when he was with the Miami Heat. LeBron James, he always showed up. And that's one of the things that I think we also need to say about Kawhi Leonard. Because if you remember, people were saying if Kawhi wins this championship, obviously it would have been his 3rd finals MVP with the 3rd different franchise. Now, if it was going to elevate him if he won a championship, if you go out in the 2nd round, doesn't that take away from your legacy as well? Like, we're talking about Kawhi Leonard, he also doesn't have no NBA MVPs on his resume. And again, this load management thing, doesn't sit well with some people. Like the thing about Kobe, the thing about MJ, the thing about LeBron, what makes those guys great was every single night we knew they were going to play and they were going to put up elite statistical numbers. They were going to show up and they were going to put on a show for the fans. Kawhi Leonard doesn't do that. Kawhi Leonard shows up some nights and he has DMPs next to his name because he's load managing. If you're going to load manage, you damn sure better win the NBA championship because you well rested. There ain't no excuses. You got 4 months off because of the coronavirus pandemic. There ain't no excuses. But Doc Rivers making up excuses talking about, oh, well, there were players in the fourth quarter who were tired and needed to come out and only could run for about 3 minutes. No, we don't want to hear those excuses. These brothers had 4 months off. They had 4 months off. And then you heard Paul George say, well, we basically, this wasn't a championship or bust season. The hell with that, Paul George? That's a cop-out. That's a cop-out, Paul George. We don't want to hear this was championship or bust. With the roster that you put together, this is championship or bust. This is the NBA. The NBA, when you sign free agents to your team, you have championship expectations your first season together. That was a cop-out excuse from Paul George in that press conference yesterday, Clarence. I don't know what the hell what he was talking about. Like, come on now. Ain't no damn excuse.
Funny. It's funny because AD and LeBron, they in their first year playing together too, and they're on the way to a final. So that's a lot of double standards right there.